Hello, everyone. Welcome to our July presentation. Cheyenne Mack is here, and she's going to talk to us about incentives for native wildlife management on private lands in Texas. So Cheyenne is an Erath County native and has always been passionate about the outdoors in the area she grew up. She attended Tarleton State University, where she graduated with her BS in Wildlife Sustainability and Ecosystem Sciences and an MS in Agriculture and Natural Resource Sciences. Her experiences at Tarleton developed her passion for wildlife and outdoor education. As an undergraduate student, Cheyenne was secretary of the Tarleton Student Chapter of the Wildlife Society, involved with the Education and Outreach Committee of the same organization, a residential leader at Centennial and Legacy Halls, a 3-year Tarleton cheerleader, I had no idea, and a student academic mentor. During her time as a graduate student, she continued to help provide opportunities to the Wildlife Society, continued as a student academic mentor, assisted with a variety of undergraduate classes, attended the 2019 Southern Africa Study Abroad as a graduate assistant, and worked diligently with the People and Prairies Partnership Project between local landowners and the WSES department. Since graduation, Cheyenne has continued to focus on her passion in education and taught a 3-hour course as an adjunct professor at Tarleton. That's so cool. She has also volunteered her time with African Wildlife Services by assisting the development of various projects, including a future South African BioBlitz. She recently accepted a position with De Leon ISD, where she hopes to use her knowledge of outdoor education to teach local students the importance of conservation and sustainable agricultural practices. Welcome, Cheyenne, and we're very excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you. If I would have known that you were going to have to read all of that, I definitely would have left a lot out. But that's me in a nutshell. Some of my passions, where I'm at now and how I got there. I also went ahead and included a little slide to tell y'all a little bit about myself. So just gonna kind of go off of that. As Megan said, my name is Cheyenne. I am from Dublin, Texas, and I currently live in De Leon on this beautiful, beautiful property. I'm very blessed, so I am very familiar with the area, and I absolutely love this area. It's part of the reason why I stayed here to go to Tarleton. I just couldn't find it in myself to leave. But growing up, I was always really interested in conservation and the outdoors, but I was also very involved with agriculture. And so this picture down here at the bottom right of the slide, that's actually a part of the property that I'm living on now, where we do run a small herd of cattle. Before you get too scared, we do kind of try and tie in some wildlife conservation with it. And if y'all heard earlier, we actually just heard some bobwhite calling out here, which is super awesome to see that agriculture and wildlife can coexist. And despite the area being so immersed in agriculture and growing up with that culture, I decided to attend Tarleton State and major in wildlife, as Megan said earlier. And I couldn't be more happy with that decision and where I'm at now. And I think it's especially important in this area to be able to understand agriculture and the people that are involved in agriculture so that we can have those crucial conversations with them and kind of educate them on the importance of coexisting with wildlife, which is something that we don't always get to do and conversations that we don't always get to have in a productive way. But during my time at Tarleton, I became very interested in outdoor education, which is where my interest has remained. I worked at the Houston Zoo, which you can see a picture with me and Jonah. Here, I worked in the education department, which was absolutely wonderful. And as Megan said, I also did a lot of work with the Tarleton Student Chapter of the Wildlife Society. This is a picture of me on the Africa Study Abroad, where I got to teach as a graduate assistant. And it was at Tarleton that I met my husband, Ian Mack, and he is currently finishing up his master's project on carnivores in South Africa. And we recently, just a little bit over a month ago, welcomed our first daughter, Miss Stella Iris, which is the picture that is clearly double the size of all of the rest of them, just for y'all to enjoy, because I'm going to be bragging on her nonstop for the rest of her life. But to get a little bit more into what I actually did at Tarleton and my project, and kind of starting to go into what we're going to be talking about today. My master's project was at Fences Ranch, which is a privately owned and located in Erath County. It's about 7 miles south of Stephenville, headed towards Hyco. And the landowners started the project because they had a really strong interest in managing their land for wildlife and for conserving Central Texas prairies specifically. That's where their passion is, and they really wanted to kind of transition their land from agriculture based to doing what they can to protect that historic piece of property. It's really a beautiful property. If anybody ever gets an opportunity to go out there, I strongly recommend it. Education is also one of their passions out there. And so I know that they're going to be having a few days, hopefully soon, to bring and invite the public and landowners out there so you can actually see what we've been doing and the work that we've been doing out on that property. So if y'all get the opportunity to attend, I absolutely recommend that y'all do it. Y'all will not be sorry, I promise. But since my time out there, multiple other projects have been started as well. Megan's actually been doing a lot of work out there, I know, and quite a few other students as well. So it's really exciting. But at the beginning of my project, we ended up developing a management plan that was completely based on a 1D1 tax valuation, which that 1D1 tax valuation is what we're really going to be talking about today and kind of diving into, because that's a major, major incentive for wildlife management, especially in this area and throughout Texas. But after we developed that plan, we submitted our application for a 1D1 valuation, which we got. And we started implementing all of the practices and goals that we implemented and put into that management plan and that application. We also kind of designed an education framework that we've implemented in the form of a website to kind of showcase everything that we've been doing and our plans to continue in the future. And the landowners are hoping to continue this partnership with Tarleton indefinitely, as far as I know, so they can educate other local landowners, like I mentioned earlier, as well as the county appraisal offices about the 1D1 land valuation, because it's something that not a lot of people know about or understand in this area, which is a huge challenge for us. Okay, so to start out, we're going to talk a little bit about what a tax exemption really is, because we hear these words all the time, and some people have a really good understanding of them. And some people, if you were like me, whenever I first started this project, I really didn't understand them all that much. I just thought you didn't have to pay your taxes because you had cows, basically was my understanding. But it's super, super, super complicated. So landowners that qualify their land for a tax exemption are actually receiving a tax valuation on their land. So it means that their land taxes are calculated based on the productive value of their land, not so much that they're just not having to pay taxes. So they're paying the valuation price rather than the market price of the land. And most landowners in this area, if not all landowners that get some type of valuation besides fences, receive this valuation strictly through farm agriculture use. So cattle ranching, hay production, crop production, or even a combination of a few of these different things. And I say all but fences because whenever we actually went to our county office to apply for the valuation for fences, they had absolutely no idea what we were talking about, what we wanted to do, or how to go about it, which is really, really sad, because those are the people that are supposed to be able to answer the questions for you. But it's a great learning opportunity, and that's part of the great thing about Fences Ranch and this partnership with Tarleton, is because we're able to create those conversations and move forward and hopefully create opportunities for other landowners in the area. So there are quite a few different types of exemptions, and they go from anything from honey production to cattle production, hay production, like I just mentioned, any kind of crop production, a combination of those things, or what we're here for, which is wildlife. And this little, oh, there it is. Okay, and this little picture down here is actually at Fences Ranch. That's an eastern phoebe that we caught on one of our game cameras that some students set up. So that is super cool. So there are some qualifications for land valuations, and they vary by county to county, and also they vary depending on the specific type of production that's being utilized on the property. But generally, a landowner needs about 10 acres of appropriate land at minimum. Of course, that's a very, very bare minimum. It makes it harder if you don't have as much land, but don't ever let a landowner tell you just because they only have a few acres or so that they can't do any type of land valuation, because that's not true. Whether it's a 300-acre property, 700-acre property, or 15-acre property, there is some type of land valuation that you can get. So that's really important to keep in mind. In addition, the type of production or the purpose of the land has to be deemed as appropriate as per the state's manual for appraisal, and it has to meet the necessary degree of protection for at least 5 of the past 7 years. But once again, these are just really, really broad qualifications that get more specific with each type of valuation. But that's just to kind of give everybody an idea of what we're looking at whenever we start looking at different types of valuations. And to get a little bit more specific, wildlife management is considered a 1D1 valuation. So here are the 4 major requirements that are associated with that valuation. So number 1 is basically saying and describing what type and parts of a land an appraisal can be applied to. So a major takeaway from this one right here is to keep in mind that land improvements, things like buildings, silos, barns, things like that, are not included with any type of land or agriculture appraisal. They're appraised at a separate value, which is most likely going to be the market value. The second eligibility requirement, whenever you apply for a valuation, the land has to currently be devoted to the agricultural use in the application. So we just talked about how 5 out of the 7 years you have to be implementing whatever you applied for. So the year that you are actually putting in your application, it has to be one of the years that you're actually practicing those practices noted in your application. The degree of intensity test, number 3, this one is going to vary year to year and depending on the county. So your chief appraiser sets the degree of intensity each year, and that test, it measures whether the land is being farmed or ranched to the extent that's typical of an agricultural operation in that specific area. And once again, in that given year, because we're going to vary year to year, depending on drought, rain conditions, and things like that. And then number 4, the past time period test, that's the 5 out of 7 years that we were just talking about. The land being appraised must have been devoted to an agricultural use for a minimum of 5 out of 7 of the preceding years to the application. That one's really straightforward. It's just to ensure that, you know, you're not doing the practices that year, and then you end up not doing them for the next 6 years until you have to put the application in again. So those are the basic requirements for a 1D1 tax valuation, which once again, what wildlife management falls into, and what we're going to be kind of getting into more of here throughout the rest of the slideshow. So now talking about an incentive and why land valuation is considered an incentive and why it's important, not just for agricultural use, but for wildlife management as well. And something that I want to kind of point out here before I get too far ahead of myself, whenever I say agricultural use, talking through the slideshow, I am including wildlife management as agriculture. And that's really important to take note of, because even though, you know, agriculture and wildlife aren't always the same in some people's minds, it is considered an agricultural land valuation whenever we're talking about tax exemption. So keep in mind, even though I say agricultural use, I mean wildlife management as well. But land valuation as an incentive is something that's very, very important to farmers, ranchers, and wildlife conservationists as well. A big thing about land valuation is that it relieves financial burden. And ag valuations are significant and very necessary to most agriculturists and landowners, especially in this area and in areas throughout smaller counties in Texas. In the case of agricultural farming and ranching, many landowners wouldn't be able to afford their career without a land valuation program. But it's important to keep in mind that those careers are necessary. Farmers and ranchers are necessary to a certain degree. And so there has to be some sort of program, some incentive that we give them so that they can continue on with their careers and they can continue on farming and ranching. But looking at it from a different angle, from a wildlife conservation point of view, we understand how detrimental farming and ranching can be to wildlife and wildlife habitat especially. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard farmers and ranchers in the area use land valuation as an excuse as to why they have so many livestock on their land, or to why they have so much of a certain crop on their land, or why they happen to plant or farm crop a certain way. They always go back to they have to have it that way so they get their land valuation, because they cannot lose their land valuation. It's an incentive. There's an incentive for them to do it that way. Many landowners appreciate wildlife, but they don't think that there's the same incentive for wildlife. The most, I guess, the highest incentive that they see that they have is at an emotional value. So a landowner may enjoy having deer on their property. They might like having deer come so that they can hunt the deer. They might enjoy different songbirds just because their grandma liked a certain kind, or their grandma loved bluebirds, so they want to have bluebirds. Or they might enjoy dove hunting, waterfowl hunting, a variety of things. But to the most degree, it's an emotional connection currently in this area, especially. But most of these people don't know that there is and are unknown opportunities to landowners with land valuations, and that being a wildlife management land valuation, which ultimately is why I'm here talking to y'all today. And so to get a little bit more into that, it's actually extremely, extremely simple to fill out a land valuation for wildlife management, believe it or not. These are the qualifying management practices that you have to meet in order to have the land valuation. So there's habitat control, erosion control, predator control, census counts, providing supplemental water, providing supplemental food, and providing shelter. But the crazy thing is, and I still can't wrap my head around it. And I still, all the time, whenever I was filling this out for fences, would go through and double check that this was right. You only have to meet 3 of these qualifying management practices to get a land valuation. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand as well. I've talked to people who have looked at this application before and said, to heck with it, I cannot do all of that stuff. But you only have to meet 3 of these things. You get to choose 3, do them, and you're good. And the crazy thing is too, is I guarantee you a lot of landowners in this area are actually probably doing 2, 3, if not more of these already. Erosion control and predator control, unfortunately, I know there are some mixed emotions and mixed thoughts on that. But those are 2 that are very easily being done on most people's land now here in this area. Also providing supplemental water. That's a big one that's probably being done in a lot of different, on a lot of different land. And providing shelter. That's as simple as putting a bird box out. And I know there's a ton of people who put bird boxes out. Purple martins are really big in this area. So, putting out shelter for purple martin, all of that qualifies. So the practices are super easy. You only have to meet 3 of them. And like I said, most landowners in the area are probably already doing these things. And so habitat control, census counts, and then providing shelter were actually the 3 that we chose to do on my project at Fences. And even though those were the 3 that we chose to do for the application, throughout implementing those practices and making our management plan, we actually ended up doing a lot more than just that. Those are just the 3 that we chose to put down. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this so I can go over to the actual application that we filled out, because I want to go ahead and show that to y'all right quick since we went ahead and went over the qualifying management practices. Let me see if I can do this right. Can y'all see this okay? This Word document, this very lovely official looking thing. Cool.
Yes.
All right, so this is the application for the 1D1 tax valuation with wildlife management. And obviously, whenever you just kind of look at this and scroll through it, it looks a little bit scary, like any kind of paperwork is going to look. But I promise it's a lot more simple than it appears. So I'll just walk through y'all with this really quick so y'all can get a better idea of what it takes and how to fill out something like this. So part 1, obviously, it's just the owner information. I took out all of the Fences owners information, so y'all didn't get their phone numbers or anything. But here's the owner information, super simple. A description of the property. This is a part that might scare some landowners in the area, the habitat types and the amount of acres. So that's something that Tarleton and the Fences project could be really helpful for local landowners to really utilize, so they understand the difference between, what exactly is considered a grassland, what is considered native, things like that, so they can really understand how they can go about breaking their property into these little pieces and understanding how to fill this out. It's scary at first if you don't really understand all of these terms, and a lot of local landowners around here might look at it and once again say to heck with it. But by educating and by providing landowners with, some type of resource to go to, this is super simple to fill out. Species targeted for management. This one's really fun for me. If I was a landowner, I would love to fill this part out. It's like, okay, this is my wish list for Christmas. I want deer, I want turkey, I want quail, I want it all. That would be me. But yeah, you just put down whatever species you want to target. Turkey, quail, songbirds, bats, small mammals are what we put down for Fences. But we've ended up doing work with amphibians, insects, and a lot of other things. Deer, we've done some studies with deer and things like that. So that all is really simple and straightforward. Part four, the management plan and goals and objectives, is where it gets just a little bit trickier, but not too bad. So the biggest part of your management plan, goals and objectives is you want to be very, very detailed. And that's the biggest thing that we kept on getting whenever we went to different offices for direction, is be as detailed as you possibly can be. And this, we're going to go over it a little bit later, but this we all took from our management plan. And so that's why it's kind of beneficial for landowners, if they have the opportunity, to have some sort of framework to kind of develop a management plan so they can take from that to fill out this form for the 1D1 tax valuation. But this is what we filled out. We got some goals. I won't go over them too in depth, but goal: increase biodiversity, restore more natural plant animal communities and ecological processes. And then we gave our objectives of how we were going to do that. Once again, the more specific, the better. Give a goal and say explicitly how you're going to meet that goal, and give more than one way. Because as we know, with wildlife conservation, working outdoors, more than likely things are going to go wrong and you're going to have to readjust. So have a couple different avenues of how you're going to meet that goal. Our goal too was to increase the number of species of wildlife documented on the property, especially songbirds. And then we had objectives of how we were going to do that. Success story: last year we had purple martins establish and actually have 2 successful nests hatch out at fences. This year, I don't know, a lot of y'all may have heard of this, but they've actually had a bald eagle out on the property, which is super, super, super cool. It gives me goosebumps talking about it now. So we've actually already had a lot of success. Our third success kind of goes in with goal number 3. We wanted to increase the number of northern bobwhites occupying the property. To our knowledge, they hadn't documented hearing bobwhite. As long as they'd been out there, they had to have been there at some point. But since we'd been working out there and everybody we talked to, the ranch manager before us, they hadn't documented hearing bobwhite or seeing bobwhite at all. Last year, whenever I was out working with the purple martins, I would hear them calling every single day, and actually flushed up a cubby while I was out there. So there's another great success story, showing that whenever we implement these practices, it actually does work. We're not just filling out paperwork as an incentive for evaluation. That's a big plus, but we're actually successful in our goals that we want to achieve. So there's just an example of that. And like I said, I'll bring up my management plan for fences here in a little bit. It's a little bit easier to kind of see, and it kind of gives you an idea of a format of what landowners should be looking for or looking to do whenever they create their own. So going on, part 5, this is where you just select the 3 different qualifying practices that you're doing, which, like I said, habitat control, census counts, and providing shelter were the 3 that we chose to do. And right here, you'll see a minimum of 3 practices is required. So once again, only 3. That's absolutely insane to me. It's super, super easy. You've just got to sit down and get started on it. This is if you're going to be doing any whitetail deer or mule deer population management. We didn't do any type of management on fences, but this will get a lot of landowners excited because hunting can be a part of the wildlife management plan. Hunting's considered wildlife management, and I know that gets a lot of people excited in this area. And it's also a great opportunity too, because we're talking about education and wanting to educate landowners, especially in this area, and let them know, you know, farming and ranching can exist alongside wildlife management. And this is a great way to get them excited, because a lot of people don't understand how hunting can be utilized in a positive way as healthy management. So it's a great education opportunity once again. This is just asking if you're a member of any type of wildlife management associations. And then this gets down to your management activities, which this is a big part that I really wanted y'all to see, because this basically walks you through everything you have to do and gives you options of things that you can do in order to meet any of the qualifying practices. So for habitat control, it gives you options of different things you can do. So if you came into this thinking, well, maybe I want to do habitat control, but I don't really know what that is. Well, it's right here for you. It's grazing management. It's prescribed burns, range enhancement, which is seeding. All you have to do is reseed, how to reseed it. It gives you all of these options: brush management, fence modification, things that you can do, riparian management and enhancement. It literally gives you options of things you can do, and you can research to see if those things are an option for you, are an option for landowners. So that's a really cool part of this application that I like. And so you can see up here what we decided to do: grazing management, prescribed berm, range enhancement. We tried doing some reseeding. This isn't so much of a success story, but I tried to reseed a Bermuda grass field, and I ended up just getting a bunch of Johnson grass coming up instead. But that is a work in progress, and I know they've got a lot of great ideas on how to combat that in the future. Scrolling through this a little bit more. Do what?
Cheyenne, Jenny and I did a plant survey of that field the other day. There's actually a ton of stuff coming up.
Really?
Yeah.
That is so good to hear. Let me tell you, last year after I seeded it, I walked down there and it was just Johnson grass taller than me, and that was the only thing that we can see. But that is so exciting. So it is a success story.
It's getting there.
It's getting there, and hopefully when I reseed that with my own seed mixes, it'll be a lot better. So awesome success story, Cheyenne.
Please send me pictures if y'all can.
Of course.
That makes me so happy. That's so cool. So going on, erosion control. Once again, erosion control I talked about. There's probably a ton of landowners in the area that are already doing this and might not even realize that it could qualify for wildlife management. And once again, it gives you options on how you can meet this qualification, which is super, super handy. Predator control. I know that's kind of like a touchy subject. Maybe it should be included, maybe it shouldn't be, but this is something, once again, that a lot of landowners are probably doing anyways. And a positive to this being included on the valuation is maybe that this is an opportunity, once again, for education, and they can learn how to predator control in a sustainable way, or in a more sustainable way. And they realize it's a little bit more than just having fun going out and spotlighting, that there can be a reason behind it and how to do it in a responsible manner. So predator control is included. Supplemental water gives you a checklist of all of the ways you can meet it, providing supplemental food, which this actually kind of goes a lot into range enhancement and things like that. Providing supplemental shelter, which this is another really, really easy one to meet. As you can see, we did nest boxes and cavities, bat boxes, and we actually had a few extras that we didn't include on this that we ended up just saying, to heck with it, let's go ahead and put some boxes out. And brush piles, great for bobwhite. A lot of different options on here of what you can do. Census counts. Census counts are so easy. I say they're so easy. Once you understand it, and if you can get over getting up early in the morning and the repetitiveness of it, it's really easy. And it's actually something that's probably pretty cool for a lot of landowners to be able to go out and do. Once again, a great education opportunity for landowners if they decide to go this route. And it gives you all of the different ways that you can go about doing census counts. Checklist, once again, makes it super simple. We did census and monitoring of non-game wildlife species. Later on, we explained how we did all of that, in addition to miscellaneous counts. And so down here, we are not going to go over this in detail, I promise. It's just a lot of writing. Basically, we copy and pasted our management plan over here to explain all of these things in detail, which we didn't have to do. But once again, not a lot of people had done this in the area, so we wanted to make sure we crossed all of our T's and dotted all of our I's. So yeah, that's the rest of what we did. And if y'all want a copy of this, and there's a great little map of fences sideways if y'all can see it. But if anybody wants a copy of this, I would be more than happy to send it to them. I'll have my email available at the end of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy, whether it's blank or of this as a template, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. All right, let me stop this share. And then right quick, before we finish up the presentation, I'm going to go over to the management plan to show y'all that right quick. Maybe. There it is. All right. Can y'all see this okay? Yeah, okay, cool. All right. So this management plan basically took the 1D1 valuation and put it into a 5-year plan of all of our goals and how we're going to meet those goals. The goals are over here on the left. So assess and monitor existing biodiversity. That's our census counts. So that's one of the qualifying management practices. And these are all of the different counts that we did. Vegetation surveys, bird surveys. I say that we did. These are actually ongoing. So bird surveys, fish surveys, mammal surveys, incidental vertebrate observations, pollinator surveys, harvester ant, so on and so forth. There's a ton of different types of census counts you can do. And so we listed out all of the different activities, the practice, how we were going to do it. So for example, our vegetation surveys using a Daubenmeier cover class method and point quarter method. And then we wrote out what we were going to do every single year, 2019 all the way out. our activity, what we wanted our outcome to be, and if there was going to be any cost associated with it. And as you can see, something that's really cool with this and something that's really great for landowners, no cost. And I say no additional because of this is a partnership with Tarleton, so there are costs associated with the partnership, but there is literally no cost associated with doing all of these practices, which is so, so big for a lot of landowners. If you want to get this type of valuation, there's so many things you can do that don't cost you a dime. So that's an example of all of the different surveys we did to meet that one goal. Let me go down here and find another one. So our second goal was to restore ecosystem function. That's meeting another one of the management practices that you have to qualify for the valuation. And then how we were going to do that, for example, prescribe fire, developing a plan, and then how we were going to act out that plan on a yearly basis. Enhancing native biodiversity, same thing, all the way down to the bottom where we actually included providing outreach, demonstration, education, and interpretation opportunities, which is what we're going to kind of go into after this. But this, once again, I think is a wonderful, wonderful template for landowners to have, especially if a 1D1 valuation is something they're interested in, because you can just go through, determine what your own goals are, use some of these practices if you like, and just fill it in, whatever works for you and whatever works for your land. And I know something that Fences really wanted, they wanted landowners to have access to this as a template so they could take it and use it on their own land to develop their own types of management practices. So once again, if anybody wants a copy of this, I'd be happy to send it to you as a template, whether you want it for yourself or to pass it on to any friends, landowners, things like that. I'd be more than happy to send this on as a template because it is super, super handy. I still use it thinking about stuff to do out here on our place. I utilize it for that as well. So super, super handy. But down to, since this is Master Naturalist, where is it? There it is. Providing outreach, demonstration, education, and interpretation opportunities. So like I said, Fences Ranch wanted more people to understand what a 1D1 valuation was. They wanted to understand the variety of incentives that there are to manage for wildlife, the big one being the 1D1 tax valuation. And they wanted to really kind of take this management plan and take the 1D1 tax valuation and present it to the public in a way that's a little bit easier to understand. And so what we did and what I did at the end of my project was I worked with a developer out of Canada and we created the People and Prairies website. And so basically the People and Prairies website is all of this information just in website form. So let me see what time it is. Yeah, we got plenty of time. Cool. I was really hoping we were going to have enough time for me to be able to show you all the website really quick, because basically all of this information is the 1D1 valuation just shown in different ways. So let me go back over here, Google Chrome. Here we go. All right, so this right here is the People and Prairies website that we developed. Once again, based on the 1D1 valuation, just in a different form for people to be able to understand and kind of be educated on it in a much easier way. So People and Prairies is kind of what the Fences project is known as now, I suppose, the overall project as a whole. And this right here is a fun little video. I would play it if I wasn't outside and if we weren't on Zoom. It's a fun little video that kind of describes a little bit more of what we do in a fun little video format way. So if y'all get an opportunity to check out this website, people-prairies.com, y'all can check out that video on y'all's own. But we have a fun little section here where you can learn about the species that we have on the ranch. And then this right here, management activities, is the big thing that I wanted to show y'all. Because right here, these are all of those goals that I just showed y'all on that plan. And then if you click learn more on any of them, it takes and it breaks it down and actually shows you how we're meeting each of those goals. So once again, if you remember the 1D1 valuation form that we just looked over, this is everything that we had included on the 1D1 valuation, just in a much more friendly and educational way. So census counts to assess and monitor existing biodiversity. This is how you do it if you want to do it. And then also we included over here definitions to all of these different things in case people wanted a little more information on what any of those things were or how to kind of go about doing it themselves. Our point count method basically tells you how to go out and do a point count method like we did at Fences. So I'm really, really, really proud of this website. And I think it's a great start for educating landowners on how to go about getting a 1D1 valuation, since there's not a lot of information regarding that in our appraisal office in this county or in Comanche County. And that is something I wanted to touch on earlier, which I didn't. So Erath County kind of has a little bit of an idea of how to get that valuation through wildlife management. But here in Comanche, my parents actually went to the office to talk to them about getting wildlife management valuation here on this property that we're at now. And they were originally turned away and told that it's something that they couldn't do, that Comanche County just didn't do it. Which is really sad and absolutely insane to me because there's so much potential in this county on lands here. We heard Bob White calling. There's so much potential here. So that's something that we're going to be working on here in between all the other crazy things I'm doing, is kind of coming up with a management plan like I did at Fences and putting it into that application form and trying to educate our office here and seeing if wildlife management is something that we can get going. Because besides my parents, there's a ton of people that we've talked to over here that are really interested in it. It just seems that we keep on meeting that dead end and that we're not able to. But we were successful in Erath County. Maybe we'll be successful over here in Comanche County. But yeah, so this is that, where is it? This is the rest of the website. I thought, there it is, the glossary. And this is the glossary that just tells you a little bit more about all of those different, the different practices that we were doing. Growth of the field, we'll have to update this. Megan and Jenny, growth of the field, the Texas wintergrass field. We'll have to go in and update this. But yeah, this just gives you a little bit more information on how to do these practices that are required with the 1D1 valuation. Okay, let's go back to the slideshow. There we are. All right. So here is that people-prairies.com if anybody wants to jot that down. And I think that's actually, I feel bad because I'm like way early, but that's actually about all I had. I wanted to be able to open it up for questions. I'm not super knowledgeable. I know quite a bit about the 1D1 valuation, a lot more than I did to begin with, but I'm still learning. So if we wanted to open up to questions, I'll answer what I can, or if we just wanted to have a discussion about some of this stuff, I think that would be really, really awesome too, because I'm always open to hearing what people think about this, their experiences with it, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
Oh, thank you, Cheyenne. Such exciting information. It's so cool to hear how to actually do this so that we can kind of break down that intimidation factor and really get people started.
It's very intimidating. That's a big thing with it.
I have a question, Cheyenne, if no one else has one to start.
Hopefully I have an answer.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm curious about your burns and how you guys kind of plan that out, and if you are working with any agencies or other people in the county to make that kind of thing happen.
For the birds, did you say?
The burns, the fire.
Oh, the burns. I was like birds. Okay, no, burns. Yeah, so I worked with Dr. Murray, if y'all know Dr. Gerald Murray, in the department. What was the WSES department? I guess they changed their name now, right? But Dr. Murray, I actually worked very close with for the prescribed burns. And the biggest thing that we did was starting off with a burn plan, which I should have included that. If y'all like, I can send you the actual burn plan and burn plan map with all of those materials because it shows it in a lot more detail. But planning is the biggest thing. And so we took Fences and we broke up all of the different plots and we decided which years we were going to burn which plots. And a big thing about it is that we wanted to keep the burns small, especially at first, because once again, there's a big intimidation factor, not just for the landowners, but also for people in the area and people surrounding their land. So planning was a big part. We planned it all out. We've got our years on all of the different plots we wanted to do. And from there, we haven't actually been able to implement one because our first one was supposed to happen during COVID, but everybody knows how that went. But I was really following Dr. Murray's leads on that. If you've taken his class, you'll know a little bit more about it. But really, all you have to do is have a team. You have to have the appropriate people there with the appropriate licenses, which Dr. Murray has all of those connections. And then you do have to inform the county, the fire department, sheriff's office, all of that. They have to be informed. But once you let them know, they're super helpful and the team gets out there and they'll do the burn. We just haven't had the opportunity to do it yet, but hopefully soon.
Excellent. Well, I hope that maybe some of us can come see it if you guys are going to do it or help volunteer.
Yeah, for sure. I know Dr. Murray was talking about he wanted students to be able to come out and assist on the burn. So that was a really big thing for him. And once again, going back to fences, it's all about education for them, not just informing landowners like I talked a lot about today, but they also want to provide opportunities, especially to Tarleton students. And so that was a really big thing for them is, you know, we're not just implementing all of these practices, but Tarleton students are actually able to jump on and help with those practices. So they wanted students to be able to go out there. One thing I do remember, like the most important thing with the prescribed burn is that we couldn't be held liable for it. So the biggest thing that we had to make sure of was that one of the landowners were the ones that lit the flame, and from there we would take care of it.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if any of y'all know Chance. Chance Cobbs worked out. Actually, he's still there, isn't he? He's still doing it. Well, they were actually talking about for a while, whenever he wasn't associated with the project, he worked for them. And so they were like, maybe we could just have Chance light the fire. And so that was an option that we had. I wanted to light it so bad, but you know, does anybody else have any questions or just thoughts?
Cheyenne, I'm new here, and can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay. I do have a couple of specific questions if I could ask. One is it possible to mix wildlife management with the land evaluation, all that stuff, and agricultural exemption? Like we have cows.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm not totally sure on that. And that's something that we were actually just talking about here, because we have cows. And that's how we currently get our valuation on this property here. I'm not sure if you can mix them. I honestly don't think you could, because each certain practice has to qualify in its own capacity. So it's something that we're actually looking at hopefully transitioning to completely, but I don't believe you can mix them, but don't take my word on that 100%.
It was an impression I got some time back that one problem is that things you would do for cows would actually be detrimental to wildlife and vice versa. Is that kind of true?
In a lot of ways. So in a lot of ways, running cattle is very detrimental to wildlife, but at the same time, they can coexist. And that's something really important, I think, that we need to start understanding and that we need to start educating people on a little bit more. So like here, we run our cows. We've got a small coastal Bermuda field up front, and we don't ever run our cows on it. We just use it for hay. But everything back here that the cows are on most of the time, using this as a specific example, it's native vegetation. And the great thing about running cows on native vegetation, you can't run as many, but though that vegetation is so drought resistant. So it kind of works for you and for your cows. So there's a lot of pluses that come with it. Cows can be used also as wildlife management to control a lot of different things. So if you think about it historically, bison roamed the plains. And so that's a really good comparison. Bison would come through, and it was a lot of extensive grazing all at once, but they would come through and they would control a lot of the growth. So you didn't have certain species out competing others. They controlled it. And so cows can be utilized as a wildlife management practice. I know cows are used at Rolling Plains Quail Research Ranch specifically to control, since they can't burn a lot. They use it in place of burn. So you do hear a lot of times that it's detrimental to the habitat, it's detrimental to wildlife, but we can actually use them in a lot of ways we don't think of to actually help wildlife and habitat management. So that's something to keep in mind, and we've just got to, keep on getting creative with how we're combating a lot of these issues, because, we're not going to get rid of cows. We're not going to get rid of agriculture or ranching. So we have to find ways to coexist. So they're not always going to be detrimental, I guess, is my ultimate answer to your question.
Right. Do you know whether if some of the things that I noticed, some of the things you were listing on your objectives and all of that stuff, if some of that has already been done, does it count toward getting this wildlife exemption, like
yes.
Improving a pond, repairing a pond?
So I believe repairing a pond, it depends on how far back it was, and it depends on what you're doing now to keep it in the repaired shape, I suppose. So once again, kind of think back to, I was saying 5 out of 7 years prior to is kind of what they go on. But if there are big things that have already been done, you can absolutely include that on the application, but make sure to list the things that are being done to make sure that the improvement is maintained, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
that
big
makes sense.
improvements being done count, but how are you maintaining that improvement? How are you making sure that it doesn't fall back to what it was? How are you making sure that you continue on to be productive in the way that you want to be?
I have another question.
I'm all for it. I'm trying to be
Okay.
as helpful as I can be.
Okay. All right. And two quickies. One, to get the 1D1, we go to the appraisal, tax appraisal office.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's how it should be.
Okay. And it's obvious that the material that you have on your website, the Prayers and People and Prayers website, literally does give us lots of definitions and direction. Do you know is there another resource like a book or something on wildlife management that could give us, just the kind of background we need to even know what, like that projected improvement, the kind of arc that apparently is implied in your 5-year plan and all that? Is there a good resource out there, or is your website sufficient for us?
So I would honestly say there are definitely resources that you could go to in the form of a book, but the problem is that there's a ton of them. Is that there's going to be a lot of different books, and it's not necessarily there's not one book that's going to meet all of your questions and all of your needs. So like you would have to go to a lot of different chapters and a lot of different books to answer all of your questions. And so the website, ultimately our goal was to kind of grab that information and put it all in one place so it was more accessible.
Fantastic.
So for the most part, hopefully the People and Prairies website should at least point you in the right direction. And from there, it should kind of give you a starting point on each of those different areas. And then from there, if you need more information, you know which area to look in specifically. It's not like you just have no clue with, so many things that you could grab at. So People and Prairies website ultimately should really be a good starting basis for you.
Well, so thank you for doing our homework for us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big part of my master's. So I'm glad it paid off.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
For sure, for sure.
Cheyenne, can I ask for anyone wondering? So your job title was private land consultant. Do you do this kind of work as a job, like helping landowners achieve some of these goals?
I wish I got paid for it, but I don't. But I have helped a lot of different landowners. So actually the People and Prairies website, whenever we started it up, we have like a comment section where people can email in and ask questions and ask for help. And we actually did have a landowner that reached out and wanted some help with their land and kind of some ideas. And so we actually did go out to his property, check it out for him and give him some ideas. We printed out web soil survey to kind of give him an idea of the history of the vegetation on his place and all of that good stuff. So I don't get paid for it. I wish it was my job. I would absolutely love it.
Cheyenne, I had one more question. I feel like when talking to people about this, there's a little bit of confusion. Do you have to have an ag exemption already to pursue a wildlife exemption?
No. Absolutely not. No. So a wildlife, and this is something that's so confusing, and I know I didn't do a very good job explaining it, but a wildlife valuation is a type of ag exemption. It falls under the same kind of category as all of these. So having cows or doing hay production or honey production or cotton production, wildlife management, they all fall under that same umbrella of an agricultural appraisal. So you don't already have to have one in place to get a wildlife management. It is one on its own.
Okay. So it is a type of agriculture exemption.
It is a type of agriculture exemption. And I know at one point I mentioned, that's why I wanted to say, I keep on saying agriculture, agriculture, agriculture. Wildlife is included with agriculture, which I think is kind of cool in a way because, like we were just talking about, we have to learn to coexist. So kind of accepting and understanding agriculture and wildlife kind of fall in that same little area. That's kind of cool and it's important, I think. Totally
agree. Thank you for taking your time out of your crazy schedule with your new baby to come speak to us.
Sweet little baby. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna have to start coming to these meetings now just to join in with everybody and all the fun.